The biting wind of late 1945 whipped through the skeletal remains of what was once Dresden, carrying with it the acrid scent of damp ash and despair. Across a continent scarred beyond recognition, a fragile peace had settled, yet the silence was heavy with the echoes of unimaginable conflict. Millions were dead, cities lay in ruins, and the very fabric of European society was torn asunder. For the victorious Allies, the immediate triumph of arms had given way to a far more insidious challenge: how to rebuild not just bricks and mortar, but trust, hope, and a future from the ashes of hatred. It was a task that demanded more than military might. It required an audacious, almost whimsical act of cultural diplomacy, one that would begin with an unexpected offering in the most unlikely of settings. The question was, could a simple, sweet gesture truly bridge the chasm of war? In the autumn of 1945, the air in occupied Germany hung heavy with the stench of decay and the chill of an impending winter. From the shattered grandeur of Berlin to the industrial ruins of the Ruhr, a landscape of desolation stretched as far as the eye could see. British officers, often clad in their sensible wool uniforms, surveyed the wreckage with a grim pragmatism born of years of wartime austerity. Their American counterparts, by contrast, arrived with a seemingly endless supply of chewing gum, cigarettes, and an almost bewildering optimism. The immediate task was clear: maintain order, prevent famine, and begin the arduous process of denazification. Yet beneath these logistical imperatives lay a far more profound strategic dilemma. Having won the war, how did one win the peace? How could a nation, so recently an implacable foe, be transformed into a future partner? The British government, under the watchful eye of a post-war Clement Attlee, but still heavily influenced by Churchill's earlier vision for a united Europe, understood that a harsh, punitive occupation would only sow the seeds of future resentment. The scene in a makeshift hospital in the British zone near Hanover on 17th of October 1945 was typical. German nurses, gaunt and weary, moved with a quiet efficiency amongst rows of beds fashioned from salvaged materials. Their faces, etched with the trauma of war, betrayed a deep suspicion of the Allied soldiers who now patrolled their streets. British Major Alistair Finch, a man whose stiff upper lip concealed a keen intellect and a surprising empathy, observed the interactions. He noted the wary glances, the curt, formal replies, the palpable tension that permeated every exchange. The German medical staff, though professional, were clearly operating under immense strain, their resources stretched to breaking point, their spirits battered. The challenge was immense. Millions of displaced persons, Heimatvertriebene, wandered the roads. Cities like Hamburg and Cologne were 80% destroyed, and the infrastructure, roads, railways, communication lines, lay in tatters. The population was traumatized, suffering from malnutrition, disease, and the psychological scars of total war. Finch, in discussions with his American liaison, Captain Joe Macmillan, a jovial but shrewd chap from Ohio, often pondered the deeper implications. "We can't simply rebuild their infrastructure, Mac," Finch had mused over a cup of rather weak tea. "We must rebuild their trust. Otherwise, we've merely postponed the next conflict." Macmillan, ever the pragmatist, agreed. "Yeah, but how do you do that, Major? They hate us. We bombed their cities, killed their people, and they did the same to us, mind you." The conventional wisdom dictated a firm hand, reparations, and a clear delineation between victor and vanquished. Yet a growing number of Allied strategists, particularly those with a more nuanced understanding of European history, began to advocate for an unconventional approach: cultural diplomacy, a subtle form of soft power enacted through small human gestures. It was a radical notion, almost absurd in its simplicity, but the alternative, a perpetually resentful Germany, was unthinkable. The decision was made to embark upon an unprecedented experiment in reconciliation, one that would test the very limits of human compassion and strategic foresight. The brutal conditions of post-war Germany made any form of reconstruction a Herculean task. Winter descended with a vengeance in late 1945, bringing with it biting cold that seeped into every bombed-out building and makeshift shelter. Rationing was severe, often leaving the German populace on the brink of starvation, while Allied soldiers, particularly the Americans, seemed to possess an endless supply of comforts. Hospitals, many operating in partially destroyed buildings or commandeered schools, lacked basic medical supplies, heating, and even clean water. The German nurses, like Sister Anneliese Schmidt in the Hanover facility, worked tirelessly, their exhaustion a constant companion, their uniforms patched and threadbare. Language barriers were a persistent headache, with interpreters often overwhelmed, and mutual distrust remained a thick, invisible wall between the former adversaries. The trauma of war, both for the Germans who had endured relentless bombing and the Allies who had fought their way across Europe, manifested in guarded eyes and hesitant interactions. The stark contrast between American abundance and European deprivation was often a source of quiet resentment, though rarely voiced. GIs, with their seemingly bottomless pockets of K-rations, chocolate bars, cigarettes and instant coffee, were a walking testament to a world untouched by the recent devastation. For the British, whose own nation was still grappling with severe rationing and economic hardship, this American largesse was both a blessing and a mild source of exasperation. Major Finch and his team found themselves in a delicate balancing act, coordinating with the Americans while also attempting to bridge the vast cultural chasm between the informal, often boisterous GIs and the formal, reserved Germans. The British role became one of quiet diplomacy, explaining the nuances of German etiquette to the Americans, and conversely, trying to prepare the Germans for the rather more direct American approach. The first attempts at fraternization, even under the guise of humanitarian aid, were met with profound suspicion. When American supply convoys, laden not just with medical supplies, but also with crates of ice cream mix and soda syrup, began arriving at German hospitals in early 1946, the nurses were utterly bewildered. Sister Schmidt recalled the initial encounter with Captain Macmillan, who, with a broad grin, offered her a stick of gum. She politely but firmly declined, her eyes darting to the strange equipment being unloaded. "What is this, Captain?" she asked in halting English, gesturing towards a large, gleaming machine. Macmillan, ever the enthusiast, explained it was an ice cream soda fountain. Her expression remained impassive, a mixture of confusion and a deep-seated weariness. Environmental challenges were constant. A lack of electricity meant the ice cream machine often sat idle, requiring ingenious solutions with generators. Human challenges were even greater. Grief, guilt, anger and fear were potent emotions on all sides, making genuine connection difficult. Organizational hurdles, from strict military protocols against fraternization to bureaucratic resistance from both Allied and German administrations, threatened to derail the entire initiative. Yet through sheer resilience and a shared unspoken understanding of the common purpose, the welfare of the sick and injured, the protagonists slowly began to improvise solutions, building trust one small, hesitant step at a time. As the spring of 1946 tentatively bloomed amidst the rubble, a subtle but significant shift began to occur. The persistent, if sometimes clumsy, efforts of the American GIs, quietly facilitated by British coordination, started to yield tangible results. The sight of American soldiers, initially viewed with apprehension, now often brought with it the promise of a hot meal, a much-needed medical supply, or increasingly, a moment of unexpected levity. German nurses and civilians, initially guarded, began to respond to these acts of kindness with a cautious, almost imperceptible trust. This nascent cooperation stood in stark contrast to the grim reports filtering in from the Soviet occupation zone, where harsh treatment and punitive measures were breeding deep-seated resentment and further entrenching divisions. The Western Allies, it seemed, were charting a different, more hopeful course. The ice cream soda moment became a defining symbol of this shift. One afternoon in April 1946, at the Hanover Hospital, Captain Macmillan, having finally secured a working generator, proudly fired up his soda fountain. He beckoned Sister Anneliese Schmidt over, a broad, inviting smile on his face. With a flourish, he prepared a tall glass, swirling vanilla ice cream into fizzy cola, topping it with whipped cream and a cherry. He presented it to her. Her eyes, usually so weary, widened in genuine astonishment. She had never seen such a concoction. The other nurses gathered, their curiosity overcoming their reserve. "Is this your victory drink?" she asked, her English still hesitant, but her tone laced with a genuine, if bewildered, inquiry. The question hung in the air, a poignant reflection of the cultural chasm, German formality and the grim reality of their defeat, clashing with American casualness and an almost childlike abundance. Macmillan chuckled, explaining it was simply a treat, a gesture of goodwill. British observers, like Major Finch, meticulously noted the effectiveness of these seemingly trivial interactions. He observed how the shared experience of a sweet, cold drink, a luxury unimaginable just months prior, began to chip away at the walls of animosity. Cooperation between Allied and German medical staff increased noticeably. Informal intelligence, crucial for understanding the local populace's needs and sentiments, began to flow more freely. Reconstruction efforts, particularly in the health sector, accelerated. Hospitals that had been operating with minimal staff and equipment were now reopening wards. Disease rates, particularly typhus and diphtheria, began to fall as sanitation improved and medical supplies became more consistent. German doctors and nurses, initially struggling to reconcile years of propaganda depicting the Allies as barbaric invaders with the reality of their unexpected generosity, found themselves slowly, tentatively, embracing a new narrative. The ice cream soda, a small, sweet offering, had become a powerful catalyst, a direct engagement that established trust through shared humanity. It was a testament to the innovation of kindness, a quiet rebuke to the arrogance of assuming victory required cruelty, and a stark contrast between philosophies of occupation. The unconventional approach was succeeding beyond all expectations. The ice cream soda operation, a small but potent symbol of cultural diplomacy, concluded as the immediate post-war emergency gave way to more structured reconstruction efforts. Its impact, however, resonated far beyond the fleeting sweetness of a cold drink. These small gestures of humanity, enacted by ordinary soldiers and nurses, laid an indispensable foundation for decades of peace and cooperation. Germany, once an implacable enemy, was transformed into a steadfast ally, a process cemented by the Marshall Plan and culminating in the formation of NATO. The British role in this transformation was crucial, acting as a vital bridge in the Atlantic Alliance, ensuring European balance and seeing Churchill's earlier vision of a united, peaceful continent begin to take shape. The profound consequence of these post-war operations was the understanding that wars are won not merely through military force, but through the far more complex and enduring task of winning hearts and minds. Major Finch, who later served in diplomatic roles, often reflected on those early days, recognizing the strategic genius in such seemingly minor acts. Captain Macmillan, returning to civilian life, carried with him the memory of Sister Anneliese Schmidt's bewildered smile, a testament to the power of a simple treat. Many of the GIs and British soldiers formed lasting friendships with former enemies, proving that shared humanity could indeed transcend the bitterest conflicts. In the decades that followed, historians would increasingly recognize the importance of this cultural diplomacy, often overshadowed by grander political narratives. Veterans, both Allied and German, would recall those small moments of humanity, The shared cigarette, the offered chocolate, the bewildering ice cream soda, as pivotal in their personal journeys of reconciliation. Statistics, though difficult to quantify precisely for such intangible acts, nonetheless pointed to the success. Millions of lives saved through rapid medical cooperation, the astonishing speed of German economic and social recovery, and the enduring strength of the Atlantic Alliance, all built upon a bedrock of renewed trust. This was the legacy of the forgotten heroes who chose compassion over vengeance, demonstrating the power of human innovation in the face of adversity. It was a validation of soft power, proving that genuine connection could achieve what brute force never could. The ice cream soda, in its humble simplicity, became a powerful symbol, a small gesture representing the larger truth that true peace requires far more than military victory. It demands empathy, understanding, and the courage to extend a hand of friendship across the deepest divides. Ordinary individuals, demonstrating extraordinary resilience and innovation born of necessity, had changed history. Fancy a bit more historical insight? Perhaps a delve into the unsung heroes of post-war reconstruction? Do let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating glimpses into the past. Cheerio.